Can you say friends, talking, nerdy? Close enough.
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends Talking Nerdy.
Welcome to Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim the Nerd, and seated next to me, dressed like a goth princess, we have Professor Aubrey. Say hi to our friends at home.
Hello, friends at home. You said I look like a goth what?
Goth princess, all in black and everything, except for the teal hair.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm down to be a goth princess. That's fine.
That's right. That's right. Well, this week, folks, we are rushing this episode out as soon as possible here because it is a timely matter, and it is the announcement of the inductees for the 2025 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
What?
Yes, all the way back in episode 401, back on March 17th when that episode debuted. We talked about the names that were being considered for induction for this year's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony. And as we record this last night on American Idol, that douchebag Ryan Seacrest announced the inductees. I hate that guy so much.
Really?
He's just a piece of shit. Like, the reason I say that is this. The very first season of American Idol, I don't know if you remember, there were actually two hosts. Ryan Seacrest and somebody else. But apparently, what Ryan Seacrest would do would be to, like, steal this guy's lines on live TV and make him look bad to the point where the guy was just like, fuck it, I'm out of here. Uh-huh. And then Ryan Seacrest ended up being the sole host at that particular time. But, like, I have zero respect for anybody that gets ahead by making it harder for someone else to get ahead too.
Sure.
When you step on somebody and, prevent them from, you try to squash them like a bug, you're not a good human being in any way, shape, or form.
Sure, not.
Yeah. I mean, and come on, Ryan Seacrest, if you look at him and you see douche.
He does seem very bro-ish,
Yeah, he's Ryan Seacrest. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway. They've announced the musicians and people in the music industry that are going to be inducted in this year's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So what we wanted to do is talk about the people who were inducted.
And we want to, I think, look back at episode 401 and see where we write.
Yes.
Whose favorites made it.
Yes, because if you do remember all the way back in that episode, this is the second year we've done this. I think this is the first time that we did, make sure to take the notes properly to make sure we remember which ones we picked. And, once we are done talking about all of the inductees, we'll go over our choices that we chose all the way back in episode 401 and see who had the most correct choices.
Yes, and then will there be a prize?
Sure.
Okay then.
Yeah. Anyway, and again, this is a topic that we talked about 6 weeks ago. So a lot of the same points that we made in that episode we're probably going to make again, even though we're going to be talking about these bands under a different context now since they have been inducted.
That's right.
So, with the mindset of every episode is somebody's first episode, how about we dive into the list?
That sounds great. Let's do it.
All right. NPR has a great article that I'm going to be referring to here, whose writer is Isabella Gomez Sarmiento. And I know the likelihood of her listening is very slim, but if I did mispronounce the last name, I do apologize. The article in question, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, class of 2025, and then it names some of the artists in question. And let's start off with the performer category. Are you familiar with what the performer category is?
No, let's tell everyone.
All right. The performer category, according to the Rock Hall, this category recognizes artists who have created music whose originality, impact, and influence has changed the course of rock and roll. Simple enough.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the first inductee this year, Bad Company, on neither of our lists.
It's a 50-year-old band. Just because it was the year I was born, so I know it's exactly 50 years. And the only song that I know of theirs, that I think I know of theirs, is the one that's called Bad Company.
Well, I'll go into the paragraph here that they mention because they do mention a second song that I think you might be familiar with. The English rock band released its self-titled debut album in 1974, which included its hit song, Can't Get Enough. Can't get enough of your love.
Can't get...
Remember that one?
Yes, it was terrible.
All right. The supergroup's original lineup featured vocalist Paul Rogers and drummer Simon Kirke, who had both been in the band Free, as well as former Mott the Hoople guitarist Mick Ralphs and former King's Crimson bassist Boz Burrell. Though they've been eligible since 1999, Bad Company won induction on its first ever nomination for the Rock Hall. Kind of piggybacking off the comments I made in episode 401, like, I'm not a fan of Bad Company. You know, at the end of the day, I have to accept the fact that my lack of being a fan means that I don't have a perspective and I don't really care to dive into the history to see how much of an influence they've had on other bands and whatnot. But I can't, you know, obviously they're at this point. They got inducted. Great for them. And I do have to be honest, too, like, with the type of music they made, the chances of them influencing bands that I do like is probably pretty high.
The chances of them influencing anything that I'm interested in is zero.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like this is the type of music you would expect a guy with like a mullet with a pack of like unfiltered Pall Malls rolled up in a white t-shirt on his left arm, you know, while drinking a Pabst would enjoy. Hey, baby, put on some Bad Company. And that's probably way too intelligent. No, I'm kidding. But end of the sarcasm here. Like I said, you know, I don't have to be a fan to say congratulations to them.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, because this isn't the Tim Jousma Music Hall of Fame. This is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I know. And sorry, Bad Company, for being so harsh on you.
Yeah. You suck. Anyway, how about we go on to the next choice?
Let's do it.
Chubby Checker. Chubby Checker's 1960 cover of The Twist, which had been a minor hit for Hank Ballard and the Midnighters 2 years earlier, landed him at the top of Billboard's Hot 100 chart on 2 separate occasions. It's a definitive hit of the early rock era, but Checker spent decades feeling underappreciated for his contributions to the genre. In 2001, he took out a full-page ad in Billboard magazine requesting not only induction to the Rock Hall, but also $50,000 in unmarked bills. No, I'm kidding. But also a separate courtyard statue in his honor. I want my flowers while I'm alive, he wrote. I can't smell them when I'm dead. It took a while for the Hall to prepare that bouquet, but like Bad Company, Checker is getting in on his first nomination.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, good for him on getting in. Like I said in episode 401, like, his music is like a bad earworm to me. Like, it will get into your head and keep on playing every time you hear it, but you're just like, stop, please stop. But on the flip side, you know, I think of a comment that Dick Clark made. Dick Clark, you know, there are some people, younger people out there who may not necessarily know who that is.
No, but although he was around for a really long time, like, he was old when I was born.
Yes.
But he was still on the air until I was at least 20.
No, he was on the air until the 2000s, I believe. Even after he had a stroke, he would still show up in very limited roles on New Year's Rockin' Eve before he did pass away. But I do remember a comment he made, you know, when somebody asked him what the most important rock and roll record was. He said, The Twist from Chubby Checker.
Oh, wow.
Just because of, I mean, if you think about it, like I mentioned in episode 401, like, for young people at that particular time, they were buying probably more singles than albums when it comes to rock stuff. And you know, as we discussed, a lot of big name rock bands were releasing great songs as singles, just as singles, not being a part of an actual album. So you'd have people go to the store and be like, hey, the new Chubby Checker's here. I want to get that. And then, oh, what's this? It's a new Righteous Brothers album. What's this? It's a new Beach Boys single. I'm going to listen to this. And Chubby Checker, to me, I guess, is that it was a gateway artist for that era. And yeah, just because you had a lot of people that were interested in, you know, in his song The Twist and the other dance-related songs that he did, but they ultimately ended up branching out into more because of that. And, you know, for that, I do think he does deserve induction. And also, too, I think you did touch upon it last time in episode 401, too. Like, this is an early instance in rock and roll history where dancing was encouraged. This was, dancing is a major part of music, whether it's rock, country, whatever. And, you know, this is one of the early instances to where dancing was, you know, put to the forefront and put out there. I mean, yeah, you had, his cover of it. His cover of it was a cover, and it was released before, so there were already songs coming out about dance stuff. But he's the one that blew up, you know. And for that, I think he definitely deserves the induction.
Sure, and I think just for his influence on the Beatles, probably he deserves it.
How did Chubby Checker influence the Beatles?
Well, because he was such a foundational part of rock and roll, but also because they did that song. No, they didn't.
No, they did Twist and Shout.
They did Twist and Shout.
Which is a cover of an Isley Brothers song, and I think the Isley Brothers song is in fact a cover as well of another band that did that, but still a dance. I mean, it's referring to the Twist.
Right.
But yeah, so
they do the twist when they sing it.
Yeah, maybe they were at an award show together, so I'll give that to you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And do you have any thoughts on Chubby Checker?
Just, that he's a foundational part of the rock and roll. Right.
Yeah. So I'm glad he's going to get this. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony is going to be airing live on Disney Plus in November. So if he can live that long, it'll be great to see him finally get.
He'll be so excited.
Yeah, unless he'll get up on stage. Where's my fucking statue? I said I wanted a statue, bitch. I'd love to see that on Disney Plus. He'd be my favorite artist of all time.
That'd be pretty great.
Yeah, all right. How about diving into the next one?
Yeah.
All right. Joe Cocker. The late English musician became a star in the U.S. with his raspy rendition of With a Little Help from My Friends at Woodstock in 1969. But he spent decades releasing albums and major hits including Feelin' Alright, Up Where We Belong, and You Are So Beautiful, which he told NPR in 2012 was among his favorites. Cocker was another first-time nominee this year. Good for him. Long overdue. I guess Paul McCartney and Billy Joel, when the nominees were first announced 6 weeks ago now, or 7 weeks by the time this episode comes out, they made sure to put out like press releases stating, hey, please vote for Joe Cocker. He deserves this. Mm-hmm. They said it a lot more eloquently than I did here, but they've omitted a lot of great musicians from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame over the years. And what I'm liking over the past couple of years, especially since Jan Wenner was kicked off the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame board, was that it does seem like that they are making some effort to right some wrongs. And this is one of those wrongs. Any thoughts on Joe Cocker?
Well, Joe Cocker, I first encountered Joe Cocker watching the movie of Woodstock, which is the first time I became aware of Joe Cocker, and I've really enjoyed Joe Cocker my whole life. I don't think of him as someone to listen to. You know what I mean? Like his music has been used so many times in movies and TV that even if I had never heard his actual songs at Woodstock, I would have known who he was.
Yeah, and our generation, of course, had, with a little help from my friends, every week on the Wonder Years.
That's right.
Growing up. Joe Cocker, for me, I guess, I would put him in the greatest hits category of musicians. For folks that are not aware, I have bands that I absolutely love and will listen to anything to. Bands that put out enough material that if they had a greatest hits album, I'm going to listen to that and enjoy it. You have bands that, I mean, like one or two songs, but that's about it. And then there are bands I don't care for. Four categories. He's in the greatest hits category. And a lot of great artists are in that category. So I'm not going to proclaim that I'm going to ever do a deep dive on like all of his albums at any point. Probably not. I like what I like from him, but he deserved to be in there a long time ago.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. Shall I go on to the next one?
Yes, I'm very excited about the next one.
Cyndi Lauper. Cyndi Lauper became a household name in the 1980s with a remarkable string of hits like the off-kilter girl power anthem, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, and the pop ballad Time After Time. But the eccentric rainbow-haired Lauper reinvented her sound and image over the course of several decades, dabbling in genres like country, blues, and rock, and establishing herself as an outspoken advocate for LGBTQ rights. Announcement of her induction coincides with an ongoing farewell tour across the U.S. and Europe and follows her second nomination for the Rock Hall. Whereas several members of Lauper's cohorts of 80s hitmakers, like Madonna, Prince, and Michael Jackson, were inducted more than a decade ago, several of her contemporaries, George Michael and Duran Duran, did not make the cut until recently.
Mm-hmm.
Another long-deserved choice.
Mm-hmm.
One of her contemporaries that they mentioned here in the paragraph, Madonna, definitely probably sold more records than her, but in terms of just creativity, in terms of just influence, nothing beats what Cyndi Lauper continues to do to this day. And I can't wait to see her again in August.
I know, right? You're double dipping.
Oh, yeah. Gonna see a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer twice, baby.
That's right.
Yeah. She'll be tied with Robert Plant as the musician that I've seen, more than once.
Wow. It's a strange company to keep.
Yeah. Robert Plant. But any thoughts on Cyndi Lauper? I know you were excited when you heard the news.
Yeah, of course. I mean, she's got such great songs, and we've talked about her on the show probably several times already, so I don't think I need to go back through why she's admirable. But I'm just happy to see her recognized finally.
It is about damn time.
Mm-hmm.
So how about I move on to the next choice?
Sounds great.
All right. OutKast. When much of hip-hop's attention in the mid-1990s was focused on the West Coast versus East Coast rivalry, OutKast turned heads in a completely new direction, towards the South. The groundbreaking duo made up of Big Boi and André 3000 released its debut album in 1994 when they were still teenagers and marked Atlanta as an epicenter of musical innovation with albums like Atlians, Aqua Mini, and the Grammy-winning Speaker Box The Love Below. Over the last few years, the Hall has been admitting one hip-hop act each year. A Tribe Called Quest last year, Missy Elliott and Eminem and LL Cool J before that. But the Rock Hall isn't the only pop music institution who has failed to adequately reward the genre. In the 21 years since OutKast took the prize, no other rap album has won the Album of the Year prize at the Grammys. OutKast has been eligible since 2019. The group received its first nomination this year. In regards to the Grammys have always had a reputation of being at minimum like 20 years behind. Because in the 60s, I think the Beatles did win a couple of Grammys, but they deserved a lot more than what they ultimately got.
Uh-huh.
Same with other, the contemporary artists. But then 20 years after that, in the 80s, Paul McCartney releases a weak solo album, and all of a sudden he's getting all the Grammys. I'm sure you could say the same thing about Bob Dylan as well, because Bob Dylan in the 80s and 90s started getting major attention and major awards for stuff that I think you've said as a fan yourself is not his strongest material.
Yeah.
So there is that. Also, let's be honest too. When it comes to stuff like the Grammys, you probably have a lot more white people voting, and it's not that white people don't like hip hop and whatnot, but older white people are probably not listening to hip hop enough to have any sort of real opinion on it, which is why it doesn't get the love at the Grammys each year. But at least one hip hop act is getting some love for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year.
That's right. And I think OutKast is very worthy.
Yes, I will have to take your word on that. I mean, I'm familiar with a couple of their songs. That's about it.
I think you should listen to some of their music now that they're being inducted, and you might like some of the things that they do because it's very upbeat, kind of joking, sort of very playful music.
Yeah, maybe. Shall I go on to the next one?
Yes.
All right, Soundgarden. 3-time Rock Hall nominee Soundgarden is finally being awarded for taking the Pacific Northwest grunge scene with songs like Black Hole Sun and Fell on Black Days. The Seattle-born band stood out for singer Chris Cornell's aggressive vocal style and a tortured edge that worked in the group's favor as metal turned grunge towards the late 1980s. Soundgarden broke up and reunited over the course of several decades and was reportedly working on new material at the time of Chris Cornell's death in 2017. Another long overdue nomination. I don't know when they were first up to be nominated, I guess, but this is a band that is very much deserving as one of the flag bearers for what grunge was. It wasn't just Nirvana. It was Pearl Jam, or what were they called before? They had Pearl. What was that band that the members, a member died, and then the rest of them decided to form Pearl Jam and go from there? Mudhoney.
Oh yeah, Mudhoney.
Yeah, Mudhoney. Nirvana, of course, and Soundgarden as well. I mean, they are. When you think of Seattle, they're one of the things you think of. Think of that Cameron Crowe movie, Singles. Soundgarden was in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris Cornell was a character.
And remember when we went to the apartment complex?
Yes, we...
From Singles.
Yeah, when we recorded episode 352, we went to a few places in Seattle, and you actually were the eagle-eyed person as we were driving by. You were like, oh, that's from the movie! And then after we did our thing, I think at Mopop, we came back and took pictures in front of the apartment building. And it's interesting. There are a couple of apartment buildings in the neighborhood that do look somewhat similar to that.
Mm-hmm. Sort of brick courtyard buildings post-war.
Agreed. Chris Cornell, one hell of a singer. Some of Soundgarden's music was a little darker than I would have liked, but Black Hole Sun, great. Rusty Cage. Have you heard Johnny Cash's cover?
No.
Yeah, it's on one of the American recording albums that he did with Rick Rubin.
Cool.
Very good cover. And yeah, what do you think about Soundgarden?
I don't have a problem with Soundgarden. I didn't love Soundgarden. It was a little harder than Nirvana, in my opinion. And like the Black Hole Sun song, you heard everywhere constantly. And it was one of those songs that I'm just like, that song is so annoying. But it's really a great song.
Yeah, with a wacky video.
Yeah.
Yeah, Beavis and Butthead had quite a fun time talking about that video. Anyway, how about I dive into the last group that is inducted under the performer category?
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. The White Stripes. The White Stripes led the garage rock revival of the early 2000s with songs like Seven Nation Army and Fell in Love with a Girl. The guitar, drums, and vocal duo made up of Jack and Meg White, who initially pretended to be siblings but were actually married and then divorced, are being inducted after their second nomination to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Although the group achieved modest commercial success by Rock Hall standards, their influence remains monumental. The guitar riff in Seven Nation Army has become one of the most recognizable pieces of music released in the 2000s, thanks to its widespread popularity as a soccer stadium chant.
Wow.
Yeah, another bit of trivia on Seven Nation Army. Jack White was always a fan of the Bond franchise, and he imagined this as like a Bond theme song.
Really?
Yes. While this song never ended up becoming a Bond theme song, him and Alicia Keys actually did make a song that was used for Quantum of Solace.
Really?
Yeah, very good song. And
he really wanted to be on that.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Another band from Michigan, too, so good for them.
Yeah.
You know, like I mentioned when we talked about them in episode 401, like, and I think the article here just kind of touched upon it a little bit, you know, in terms of Rock Hall standards, they were a modest success. I think more than anything, what Jack White has done throughout the entirety of his career is why the White Stripes are there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and just look at everything he's done, like after the White Stripes, you know, doing unique duets. I mean, what rock artist, how many rock artists over the years have done duets with R&B artists?
Not many.
Yeah, you know, I'm sure if I did some research, I could find more than just the one instance of Jack White and Alicia Keys. But yeah, not many. And that was pretty daring. And also, Jack White helped produce one of Loretta Lynn's last albums. He also produced a new album from an artist I discovered thanks to Cyndi Lauper, Wanda Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
So he's, you know, in terms of his influence on, you know, popular music today, I think what he most represents is that old school spirit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, in terms of respecting the past, but using that to create something new. If, you know, weird way of putting it, but I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it really does make sense. I mean, what it demonstrates is perhaps you know, that he has the musical knowledge to recognize the importance of the artists who came before him. Like, he has enough talent to see other talent. And I wonder what happened to Meg, though.
I mean, I think it was a situation of her deciding after the White Stripes ended that she didn't really have to work in the entertainment business anymore. I don't know if she has to worry about money because of the White Stripes.
Oh, sure.
But I don't know. It wouldn't shock me, though. She's still alive. But it wouldn't shock me if we saw like a, you know, one-time reunion at the induction ceremony in November.
Oh, wow.
But they were on The Simpsons, too.
Yeah.
Yep. So definitely happy for them to get in. Now, that was the end of the performer category. The next one is called the Musical Influence Award. The Hall distinguishes this category from the performer field. Acts who have been selected by its contingents of voters in order to recognize artists whose music and performance style have directly influenced, inspired, and evolved rock and roll and music impacting culture. Which is saying the same damn thing as what it said in the performance category. Ultimately, what this category has ended up doing over the past few years is the righting of the ship. Because when Judas Priest was inducted, they were inducted under the musical influence category. Not as performers. At the end of the day...
And this is chosen by the board of the...
Yeah.
You know, it's not voted on.
Correct. Yeah. So the names that were chosen in a slightly different way. But like I said, I think they've been using this to kind of right some of the wrongs. And also to kind of keep some of the critics quiet. You know, it's like we finally inducted them because they're going to get the same type of introduction. They're going to have somebody saying nice things about them. And if the artist is still there, they're going to show up and talk, or, you know, family members will talk as well. It's going to be just like the performers.
Yeah.
You know, so even though it's labeled something different, it's the same damn thing.
Yeah.
All right. The first one of the Musical Influence Award, Salt and Pepa.
Yay!
Salt and Pepa was not only the first female rap group to have a platinum album and to win a Grammy, they also led an emblematic crossover from hip-hop to mainstream pop with hits like Push It, Shoop, and What a Man. The group made up of Cheryl Salt James, Sandra Pepa Denton, and Deirdre Roper, aka DJ Spinderella, was honored by the Rock Hall during a special 2023 exhibit celebrating hip-hop's 50th anniversary. This is one of the bands I was thinking of, and I think I may have mentioned them in episode 401 when I talked about the criticism of having a newer band like OutKast. And again, I'm not upset OutKast is inducted, but it's like there are a number of hip-hop acts throughout the years that have helped shape that genre that don't get the recognition today that you would see, someone in the same particular place in like rock or in country or something like that. It's like the older artists tend to disappear more, and Salt and Pepa did not deserve that.
No.
Because stuff like Push It, even though when that song came out, like every guy like me, push it real, but it's a catchy song though.
No, it's really good.
But they had to know that people were going to have, some laughs with that too.
Sure.
Shoop, good song, What a Man. Yeah, very, very good song. Any thoughts on Salt and Pepa?
I mean, love Salt and Pepa. What can you say about
about their career?
About their career, I mean, they were very influential, I think, on any hip hop artist today, probably.
Exactly, and they were at WrestleMania 11.
They?
Yeah, they were singing Lawrence Taylor to the ring. They sang What a Man as Lawrence Taylor was going to the ring for the main event to face off against Bam Bam Bigelow. And then when Bam Bam Bigelow came out, he scared Salt and Pepa, but Salt was like, no, I'm going to get him. Like she's going to fight him or something like that. So, yeah, that's the wrestling connection.
Nice.
All right. Shall I go on to the next one?
Yes.
Warren Zevon.
Yay!
Finally gets in. Warren Zevon's first love was classical music, but he became a bona fide rock star in the 1970s with hits like Werewolves of London and Lawyers, Guns, and Money. Eligible for induction as far back as 1994, Zevon, who died in 2003, has long been a favorite of other musicians and notably former late-night host David Letterman. More than a true commercial star, and was first nominated in 2023 after Billy Joel wrote a letter to the Hall's nominating committee on his behalf. He should have been inducted a long time ago.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's under the Musical Influence Award. Again, this is him getting the honor that he deserved when he was alive.
Forgive me for not knowing this, but when did he? You said he died in 2003.
Yes.
And do you know what he died?
Cancer.
Cancer. Oh, okay, that's sad. How old was he when he died?
Maybe 50s or 60s. I don't have an exact
Oh, really?
age. Yeah. So he lived a nice long life. Like I mentioned before, the last bit of TV he ever did was on The Late Show with David Letterman, where David gave him the entire hour.
Oh, wow.
And Warren ended up singing some songs and talking with Dave. And I think Warren Zevon's words of wisdom for people, in terms of, what he was going through and what they should take from that in terms of their own lives, was to enjoy every sandwich.
Huh.
Enjoying the small things, nothing wrong with that. But, similar to when Judas Priest got in, I was quite happy seeing Warren Zevon's name on this list. Now, granted, again, this is their way to make people like me happy, but he's getting inducted.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, we'll move on now to the Musical Excellence Award.
Now, how is this one different?
Yeah, once known as the Sidemen Award, the Hall uses this category to recognize the kind of names who you'll find in liner notes, but who might not be well known to most fans. Artists, musicians, songwriters, and producers whose originality and influence have had a dramatic impact on music.
Same thing. Except people who weren't as well known.
Correct.
Don't have to be stars, just had to be influential.
Yes, and which is important as well because similar to like a movie like the Matrix. Let's take that movie for example. Keanu Reeves didn't do everything in that movie. You had other actors involved, you had the directors involved, you had the crew members involved, the people that did all the computer effects were involved as well. And it's the same in the music industry. It's not just like one person, or in the case of a band, a lot of times it's not just the core members of that group. A lot of times, even your big known bands will have side musicians come in, session musicians come in, or or you'll have producers that are very much important to the history of rock music, like Glenn Johns. I don't know if you're familiar with his name.
No.
He produced Let It Be from the Beatles. He produced a number of Rolling Stones albums. He was an engineer on a couple of Led Zeppelin albums. Was the producer of Who's Next from The Who. That had Won't Get Fooled Again and stuff like that. So his work as a producer was very much important, but not necessarily a name that everybody was going to know.
Yeah.
So that type of deal. So the first one being inducted, Tom Bell. The Jamaican-born producer and songwriter was a pioneer of the Philadelphia soul scene in the 1970s, writing and producing for artists like the Delphonics, Dionne Warwick, and the Spinners. Bell was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2006. As a songwriter and producer, he had some work involved in songs like "I'll Be Around" from the Spinners, Ghetto Child from the Spinners, Rock and Roll Baby from the Stylistics, Then Came You from the Spinners with Dionne Warwick, Mama Can't Buy You Love from Elton John, among many others. Again, I don't know much about him myself, so I can't really pontificate any longer than I already have about his work and whatnot. But as someone who is doing a deeper dive personally on, like 60s and 70s, like funk, soul, and R&B, more so than I have in the past, like, the songs from the Spinners, for instance, sound really amazing.
Really?
Yeah. Well-deserved there. Another name here, Nicky Hopkins. The English session musician played piano on some of rock and roll's most emblematic songs, from the Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil to the Beatles' Revolution. A highly respected pianist and organist. He was a member of bands like Quicksilver Messenger Service, the Jerry Garcia Band, and the Jeff Beck Group. I've definitely heard his name before, and come on, being one of the people that helped contribute to Sympathy for the Devil, that helped contribute to Revolution, like, come on. He deserved induction a long time ago.
Yeah.
The next name here, one of the few women inducted this year.
Mm-hmm.
Carol Kay.
Mm-hmm. Who's that?
A member of the famed Wrecking Crew, the LA-based session musicians who played on hundreds of hit recordings in the 1960s and 70s. Carol Kay had already played guitar in Richie Valens' hit La Bamba and several Sonny and Cher songs when a bassist failed to show up for a session at Capitol Records in 1963. She decided to give the instrument a shot, and since then has played bass on thousands of recordings, including some by the Beach Boys, Nancy Sinatra, and fellow 2025 Rock Hall inductee Joe Cocker. That little paragraph doesn't do it justice. Like, I believe she's been involved in over like 10,000 different recordings over the years. Like the Nancy Sinatra song that they didn't mention, but they said that she worked with her. She played bass on These Boots Were Made for Walking.
Well, I knew when you said that it was going to be These Boots Were Made for Walking.
Yeah, she also did plenty of stuff with the Beach Boys, including working on Pet Sounds.
Nice.
So Carol Kay, definitely a legend in the field. There is a documentary out there about the Wrecking Crew that you should check out. Maybe you can find it on YouTube. I do believe, unfortunately, it is on Amazon Prime as well. Since Jeff Bezos is a douchebag of a human being, don't necessarily recommend you going there unless you absolutely have to.
Yeah.
But anyway, the last one here is the person that was inducted under the Ahmet Ertegun Award.
Mm-hmm.
This category recognizes non-performing industry professionals who have had a major influence on the creative development and growth of rock and roll and music that has impacted culture. And the person in question is Lenny Waronker. Waronker. Waronker.
Warniker.
Warniker. Okay. Warniker. Waronker.
Waronker.
We'll call him Lenny.
Lenny W.
Lenny, yeah. Yeah. Call me Lenny, baby. The record producer turned music executive served as Warner Brothers president for much of the 80s and 90s, leading the label out of an industry-wide slump by bolstering the careers of artists like Talking Heads, ZZ Top, and Madonna. Known for his artist-first approach to leadership, Lenny went on to work at DreamWorks Records. And some of the songs that some of the albums that he's been involved with, like as a producer, he produced Sundown from Gordon Lightfoot.
Oh, wow.
So he was the producer on that one. Worked with James Taylor on a couple of albums, which included songs like How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You, or Mexico, great song, or Shower the People. Another great song. Randy Newman, he was the producer for Randy Newman on a number of albums and songs, including Short People.
No way.
Yeah, so...
a song I've never liked.
Why is that?
It just is a weird premise.
But you get why he wrote it, though, right?
No.
Randy Newman was making fun of people that were bigoted and racist because being angry at people that are short is just as ridiculous as being angry at people who have darker skin.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to make fun of that. But, you know, a lot of times you have to take, like any joke, you have to make the exaggeration bigger, in this case shorter. But I enjoy it. I'm going to defend it, damn it.
Okay.
You know. But that, my friends at home, are all of the people that are being inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for 2025.
It's a pretty good list. It featured a number of artists that we've talked about because we chose them in our choosing for who we thought should be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall for 2025.
Indeed. And like I mentioned, I am all for a musician, a musical artist to get the recognition they deserve when they put in years of work, you know, because a music hall of fame in some ways is kind of silly because it's, you know, not sports. Like a sports hall of fame, you can understand how certain people get in because you have, you know, great numbers to show. You know, like if you're a Hank Aaron hitting all the home runs that he did, no wonder he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame, right? Whereas with, you know, musicians like the Ramones, I believe, are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but record-wise, they didn't sell as many records as somebody like a Def Leppard, for instance. I think, you know, bands of that caliber have sold more than the Ramones, but the Ramones are far more influential.
Right.
You know, so that's the weird thing about music is the fact that, you know, you can have people that are extremely influential that on paper never really made a blip in the public eye.
Yeah, Ramones is such a great example of that.
Yes. Now, as you mentioned, and as I mentioned at the start here, we, in episode 401, made our choices for the bands that we would have voted for if we were voting members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We each chose 5 choices. I believe the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you have up to 7 choices if you're an actual member, but 5 makes it easier, you know?
Yeah, we like 5s.
5.
That's why we live at the 5s.
All right. So, your choices...
Yes.
were Joy Division and New Order.
I know, and I'm so sad that they did not get in. This is the second time they've been nominated. I really think they deserve it, and I'm hopeful for next year.
That's why you're wearing all black.
That's right.
Yes, because
I wear black on the outside because black is how I feel on the inside.
I'm a dark soul. The next choice you had was Chubby Checker. You had Cyndi Lauper, OutKast, and Soundgarden. So you got 4 out of 5.
Nice.
So 80% you were there. So I chose Cyndi Lauper, Soundgarden, The White Stripes, Joe Cocker, and Chubby Checker.
Holy jeez.
I hit a grand slam, baby. All 5.
You really did.
All 5.
All 5.
Yeah, so I win.
You too.
Yeah, I'll take a victory lap around the house here, Oh, I am the champion.
That's right.
I-
The kitties and I will throw rose petals in front of your steps
yeah.
and place a garland of laurel on your brow.
Yeah, rather big brow. On a big head,
We'll need a lot of laurel.
Yeah, laurels have gone extinct now. They're in my head. But I am happy for the names on the list this year. While there wasn't like a Beatles type of performer, I think a lot of the performers that you have on this list, I think again this is the Rock Hall kind of trying to right some wrongs that have been done in the past, and that's good to see. Like, hopefully this means next year we could see the Monkees get inducted.
Aww. Well, since you're such a good chooser, if you would choose them, maybe you're right.
Well, I'm not the one throwing the names into the hat. I'm only voting on the names that are already in the hat that they pull out.
I know, but you get in their heads a little bit then.
Yeah. Because it pissed me off. Like Carole King got inducted a year or two ago, and during her intro video that they played, they even included some songs from the Monkees, yet they don't deserve to get inducted themselves.
Did it credit them?
Well, yeah, I mean, people obviously know who the Monkees are anyway, at least people that go to events like that.
Gotcha.
So hopefully, and yeah, I'm sure there are probably some bands on the lower scale, like Paul Revere and the Raiders fans. I don't know if they're inducted. I don't think they are, but maybe you have people that are like, oh my God, why didn't they get in? And for like a Hall of Fame, it's like, yeah, not everybody can and should get in, but again, this is also a creative endeavor too. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I like the fact that it does allow us to talk about it, which is why we do talk about it. But in the grand scheme of things, it really does not matter.
Oh gosh, no.
Yeah.
Oh no. It's just a trifle. Just a fun thing to talk about.
Yep.
And as we've said several times, I think we all need fun things to think about.
Yeah, especially in these days and times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, that's been another interesting journey that Friends Talking Nerdy has been on, because as far as it's documented almost everything from 2017 on.
Well, right.
Yeah. So, anyway.
It's going to be like Peep's Diary.
Something like that. Pete's Diary?
Peeps.
What's Peeps?
Pepys Diary was Samuel Pepys was an Englishman who lived at the time of the Great Fire in London.
Mm.
And he kept a diary, and it's one of the most important pieces of information about that time period that we have. But he was just a dude keeping a diary.
What up, my peeps?
Mm-hmm. Peeps.
Aren't they a candy too?
They are, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Someone I know had some Dr. Pepper flavor Peeps.
Ew.
And apparently they're like blueberry Peeps. Like there's just all different colors and kinds and tastes of Peeps. And I don't ever want to taste any of them. No. I have never had a Peep. Not a single Peep.
Yeah. No Peeps from me.
No.
Anyway.
We're Peep free.
We're a peep-free establishment.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other words of wisdom for our friends at home before we wrap things up?
No. Of course not.
All right, on that note, each Monday we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
So long.
Let's twist again, like we did last summer.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy
On YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Goodbye, darling.